from the beginning, when I worked in security intelligence, I would hear from people that they were concerned about the information the government might have on them, right? What kind of information does the government collect on the citizens of Canada? And I understand that the government, for a lot of people, is just the government. It's this big monolith and it's fairly opaque. And sometimes it is kind of disturbing and, freaky about what might be going on inside of it. But there are ways that the average Canadian citizen can find out and access what is going on inside of the government. And one of those things is the most incredible piece of legislation, I think, called ATIP, Access to Information and Privacy. And it's a way for us as Canadians to get into the government and find out what's going on. So access to information is the first part of that. And that allows you to make requests for documents or anything that on a specific topic, like, decisions the government made, or like international relations or research projects or all those kinds of things. And then the access to privacy part is about you. You can always request from the federal government information about yourself. So I've decided to go on this journey because I'm always telling people about how great ATIP is, but I've never actually done it myself. So if you're interested, you can follow me on this ATIP journey. So I'll tell you, I've started it and I submitted my first access to information request yesterday. I chose to ask about Igor Guzenko, the Soviet cipher clerk who defected in Ottawa in 1945. I'm really interested in that story. It's a really big, important part of Canadian history. And actually, when I did some research about it, I realized there's a lot of fuzziness there in terms of, Guzenko and who he was and how he stayed in Canada and how it impacted our international relations and the decision the prime minister made versus the decision, other department heads made. It's a little fuzzy. So I thought, what, that would be a great topic. I'm really interested in it to get more clarity. And then, of course, when it comes to the privacy thing, I can request information about myself from any department that's out there. So to start, I'm just going to go briefly over the beginning of the ATIP process because that's the part that I've completed. So you go to the website. It's really easy to use. You have to create an account. It's no big deal. It doesn't cost anything. It's like creating an account for anything else. And it authenticates you to make sure that you're you. So the first thing it asks is this a general information request or are you requesting information about yourself? And then it kind of channels off. So the first one I did was the general information request. And one thing when you're doing an ATIP is you have to pick a specific department. You are not querying all of the federal government. It's not going to go to all departments in the federal government, which makes sense, right? Because if your request is about like policy decisions on, Apple exports, then you're not going to make that request to the Canada Revenue Agency, right? You want to get specific about the department that has the information that you're looking for. And there's help with that online. Depending on the kind of thing you're asking, you can do some decision trees and they will help you. And so what pops up is a list of all departments and they're ranked, which is really interesting about who gets the most requests. So unsurprisingly, the top three are Canada Border Services, the RCMP, and CSIS. That's where everybody's going with their requests. And it says here, well, actually, this is really interesting. So the Canada Border Services Agency got over 56,000 requests last year. Number two is the RCMP with just under 10,000. That's a huge difference. So it's CBSA by a chunk. I guess if you want to ATIP them, you might have a long time to wait unless their ATIP office is huge. So anyway, you pick your department. And then because you have an account, it auto-populates like who you are. And all you really have to do is answer a couple of really easy questions. Like one is, does it have to do with military, which obviously you would know about your request. And then you submit your actual wording. Now, the wording is really important. I knew this from when I worked at CSC. I didn't work in ATIP, but I know people who did. And it's like anything else, right? The quality of the answer is going to depend on the quality of the question. So I looked up a couple examples online of what does a great ATIP request look like? How do you formulate that wording? What do you have to have in it to make it really clear for the people who are going to go searching for this information? Because that's ultimately what they're going to do. You're going to make a request and they're going to have to search their archives, especially like if it's about something that happened a while ago, they're going to have to do a bunch of searching. So you want to facilitate and make that search as easy as possible. So I came up with some wording about Guzenko and what I was looking for. And then I ran that through ChatGPT. This is one area I find that kind of program useful to offer suggestions on improving the search terminology, given that it was an ATIP request. Got some feedback on that, redid my request. And so this is what I came out with in terms of requests. So you get an idea. It's a little bit long. I'll go through it as fast as I can, but it gives you an idea of how you might want to word an ATIP request to get the kind of information you want. So I am looking for historical records related to decisions regarding Igor Guzenko under the Access to Information Act. I request access to records held concerning the decisions made by the Government of Canada regarding Igor Guzenko, former Soviet cipher clerk and defector in 1945. Specifically, I am seeking cabinet conclusions, memoranda to cabinet, or interdepartmental correspondence concerning decisions about Guzenko's protection, relocation, or security. I'm also looking for communications between the RCMP, the Department of Justice, and the Department of External Affairs regarding how the case was handled. Reports, assessments, or policy discussions resulting from the defection and its implications for Canadian security and intelligence policy. Please include any declassified, restricted, or formerly classified materials dated between September 1945 and December 1970. It's really important to put a date range in there if you know it, because obviously if your date range is smaller, they have less searching to do. You might get your information faster. If some records are exempt, please release all severable portions. And I am making this request for research purposes and am willing to discuss its scope to facilitate processing. That's another really important line to add, because sometimes as a person going into ATIP, you don't really understand the volume that you're asking for, and saying that you're willing to have a discussion about scope in order to facilitate the searching, I think can really help get a response in a timely manner. Now, so the next thing you do is, like I said, you have to decide which department to send it to. So because I'm going after information on Igor Guzenko, and that's the RCMP Security Services, 1945 to 1970, I know that a lot of documents from the RCMP Security Services and the Canadian military as well are held by Library and Archives Canada. So that's where I submitted that request to. Because I'm also curious about Guzenko, the defection, and how it impacted our international relations, I submitted a very similar but worded slightly differently request to Global Affairs Canada, who was External Affairs back in the day. So I send that off, and it's 2 separate requests. So that's really important to note. Each time you go to one department, that is one request. There's a $5 processing fee, paid that, no problem. Instantly got a response that said, yep, everything went through. Your request is now going to the organization, and they have 30 days to respond. Now, I might not get everything I need in 30 days, but they have 30 days to at least start the process of responding to me and acknowledging, and even coming back and saying, oh my gosh, you're requesting like way too much information. We need to scope this down, or it's going to take us 10 years. So and this morning, I got a response back from Library and Archives Canada, who I just want to have a little shout out to. They are my favorite organization in the federal government. They are so easy to work with, and they're so organized, and they're so pleasant, and I really love Library and Archives Canada. Anyways, so they additionally responded, said, yep, they got it, it's in process, and they're going to start working on it. And this comes from their ATIP office. So this is just an example of, you can ask any information, right? Any information you want to know about the government, how it works, what it's done, you have this ability to ask these access to information requests. The other thing is asking information about yourself. So I'm going to choose CSIS. I thought that would be the one that most people would be interested in seeing what that response is like. So as these 2 things go through the system, I will update you on how it goes. It could be really fascinating. It could be really depressing. I don't know how it's going to be, but I'm going to learn, and I want to share that with you. If you have any questions or comments on this, anything that I didn't cover clearly, please let me know. I will do my best to make this as transparent as possible. Hope everyone is doing fantastic today.